It is half man, half ape. It lives in the shadows. Thousands of people claim they have seen it. From the wilds of the Pacific Northwest to the mountaintops of Tibet. But it remains elusive. Truth or Scare tracks the truth about the creature known as Bigfoot. Its name has been translated from many native languages. Yeti, Sasquatch, the abominable snowman, and yes, Bigfoot. Is this creature the last great undiscovered animal in the world, or just an oversized prank? For many generations, Native Americans of the Pacific Northwest have told of an ape-like creature they call Sasquatch. But it was only folklore, or so they thought. Beginning in the 1950s, hikers and woodsmen roaming the wilderness of Northern California came back with reports of a strange ape-like creature. Then, in 1958, some loggers deep in the ancient forests of the Pacific Northwest found huge, strange footprints. The press immediately dubbed it Bigfoot.
Hey, you fellas gotta come up here and take a look at this.
But as this ancient legend turned to modern rumor, two hunters who'd never seen Bigfoot set out to shoot it. On film, that is. They headed to Bluff Creek in Trinity National Forest, 160 miles north of San Francisco. It had a reputation as one of Bigfoot's stomping grounds. Roger Patterson was a former rodeo rider and part-time inventor. Bob Gimlin, an expert horseman and tracker. According to Patterson, for 7 days, they saw nothing. But all that changed on October 20th, 1967. Patterson was so stunned he fell from his horse. As he stumbled forward with his camera, he said, Bigfoot stopped to look back at them. Gimlin aimed his gun at the beast in case it attacked. The creature had seen enough. It disappeared into the forest. Patterson followed it with his camera, but he'd already filmed too much of the beautiful mountain scenery. Abruptly, he ran out of film. This is the actual film shot by Roger Patterson. Most scientists dismiss the film as a clever hoax. A man in a modified ape costume, perhaps, pretending to be the fabled creature. It is true that Roger Patterson sold rights to the footage all over the world and made a small fortune. But Bob Gimlin, who made no money for his part in the adventure, swears the film is real.
42.
Many alleged Bigfoot prints and hair samples have turned out to be fake. One bit of fur found alongside a footprint in California was actually the hair from a Barbie doll. Do these incidents prove Bigfoot is nothing more than a fable?
Left, right, left.
Did Roger Patterson actually film a shy relative of man hiding out in the wilderness for thousands, maybe even millions of years? Maybe the key to tracking Bigfoot is in his footprints. Find out next on Truth or Scare. Claims of a Bigfoot creature are not limited to North America alone. There have been reports of a similar creature in Australia, Central Asia, India, and Tibet. Coincidence? Or is it possible that a gigantic man-ape could go uncaptured for thousands of years? It may seem unlikely, but animals thought to be extinct have turned up before. In the early 20th century, many zoologists believed that all Earth's largest animals had already been discovered. But in 1939, a supposedly extinct fish, the coelacanth, was discovered in South Africa. Scientists also found the very first mountain gorilla in Africa as recently as 1901. And the first giant panda was captured in China in 1936. These animals were once dismissed as mere folklore, until science proved they were real.
I did a calculation, and I came up with about 40% of all known mammal species, 40% were discovered in this century.
Richard Greenwell is a member of the International Society of Cryptozoology, which searches for unknown animals. More traditional scientists say that cryptozoology isn't a real science at all. They say that looking for such mythical creatures as giant octopuses and living dinosaurs is inspired by pure fantasy. But Greenwell thinks Bigfoot is alive and well hidden.
There are vast regions on this planet where there is hardly anybody at all, or hardly anybody goes. And certainly, intelligent animals like primates could survive there and remain undetected. It is possible.
Greenwell believes the animal may also be a nocturnal creature, only coming out at night.
Animals have strategies for survival. You know, some move in herds, others have spines on their backs. Perhaps some animals have a strategy that makes them more difficult to find. I call that elusiveness.
Bigfoot may be elusive, but he does leave tracks. At least, that's what believers say, who point to his footprints as their strongest evidence. So far, collectors have cast more than 400 footprints. Bob Titmus of British Columbia, Canada, saw his first Bigfoot track on a logging road in 1958.
I'd never seen anything like it. I couldn't imagine what on earth was making it. And after I tracked it several times in the next few weeks, I came to believe that it had to be, absolutely had to be, some live animal.
Find out why this professional tracker thinks these footprints are the real deal. Next on Truth or Scare. The giant creature known as Bigfoot has been dodging hunters and investigators for years. He supposedly hides by day and hunts by night in the giant forests of the Pacific Northwest. The only physical evidence is its unusual footprints. The question is, are any of them real? Bob Titmus has been a professional hunter all his life, from Alaska to Mexico, but the trophies on his wall are of Bigfoot. He believes these tracks cannot have been made by man or machine.
The fluctuation in the track and the movement in the foot and the places this would go that no mechanical thing could have gone.
The tracks would eventually lead him to a remote canyon in the Rockies of northern British Columbia on a summer day in 1963. Over 30 years later, the memory of what he claims he saw there remains as clear as when it happened.
I was going up an old glacier bed, and there was reports of Indians having shot one up there many years before. And looking across the canyon, a huge canyon in front of me, I noticed 3 Sasquatch going up the opposite wall, and they were climbing just hand over hand. That was a sight to see.
Like other Sasquatch hunters who came back without even a snapshot, no one believed him. Except John Green, a writer and publisher in British Columbia. He had followed Bigfoot in the press. When he heard about Bob Titmus's find, he tracked him down.
Well, in 1958, there was a picture in the newspaper of a man holding a cast, one of these huge footprints, I just got in the car and went down there to see what it was all about. And footprints are real. There has to be something real to make them.
Since 1958, John Green has gathered more than 3,000 eyewitness accounts from the United States and Canada. Most sightings are in the Pacific Northwest. Others come from as far east as Indiana and Arkansas. He admits some reports have turned out to be false, but he's convinced most are real.
It reaches the point where the explanation that there is an animal with a foot like that and that looks like what people say they see is by far the simpler explanation than to try to patch together some human conspiracy operating over hundreds of years and right across the entire globe.
From 1958 to 1962, both Titmus and Green became involved in Bigfoot hunting expeditions led by Tom Slick. An oil millionaire, he spent a small fortune trying to track Bigfoot down. He even collected some alleged Bigfoot droppings. Lovely. But when Slick died in a plane crash, the trail grew cold. His records and evidence vanished. Some say his company destroyed them out of embarrassment. Others say they're still hidden away. Perhaps the most complete and thorough search for Bigfoot is taking place here at Washington State University. Anthropologist Grover Krantz has risked his professional reputation by taking Bigfoot seriously. He believes the footprints are real.
They're not just oversized human feet. They show 7 slightly different characteristics. 5 of these I've published in journal articles.
Krantz won't say what he calls the other 2 typical Bigfoot traits. That way, he says, he can more easily uncover a phony. The common traits that he will reveal include flat, wide feet with near equal-sized toes. Some alleged prints have ridges like a fingerprint, but again, some have turned out to be human. Nothing but clever forgeries. Still, Grover Krantz has found examples of Bigfoot tracks he believes would be impossible to fake.
What happened here is the individual stepped on a stone, and the stone impressed deeply into the foot. Now, we know that this was not a fake that somebody put on and rocked it side to side to get the impression on both sides, because a very good fingerprint expert was able to trace dermal ridges running all the way across the footprint without any break, right through the rock impression. And since there's no human foot that is this large, and no human foot has that thickness of padding, we're quite sure this is real.
By studying the Patterson film frame by frame, Krantz has even come up with a theory on the mechanics of how he thinks Bigfoot walks.
They do swing their arms back and forth in a human manner, but the differences come from they lean forward at the hip more than a normal human does or should. When they put weight support on one foot, they bend the knee, so.
And most reports of Bigfoot have described the same slumping posture, slightly bent knees, and free swaying arms.
That's roughly how the Sasquatch is walking on the Patterson film, and that's about how they would have to walk if they weigh 500 pounds or more and are well muscled.
Solid proof, like Bigfoot, remains hidden. Can bones discovered in a cave in China prove the existence of a giant man-ape? Find out next on Truth or Scare. Is the Bigfoot of the Northwest a lonesome relic from another era, or does he have relatives around the globe? People the world over tell tales of a half-man, half-beast lurking in the shadows. The Himalayas, one place with a long history of sightings, is home of the legendary Yeti. Like Bigfoot, the Yeti is said to be a hairy ape-like creature with a cone-shaped head. In 1921, British explorers were the first Westerners to try climbing Mount Everest, the world's highest mountain. At 17,000 feet, a Sherpa guide spotted dark figures moving in a snowfield above them. According to the guide, the creature was what the Sherpa natives called Metoa Kongmi, or the man who is not a man. But a mistake in the translation ended up giving the mysterious beast its more familiar name, the abominable snowman. Overnight, the abominable snowman became a worldwide sensation. According to the Sherpas, he was a man-like creature. And he wasn't abominable at all, but a shy, harmless beast who was afraid of humans. For the next 40 years, dozens of other Yeti sightings were reported in the Himalayan mountains of Tibet. Then, in 1960, the man who had originally conquered Mount Everest, Sir Edmund Hillary, returned to the Himalayas. One of his goals was to find the so-called abominable snowman. He found snowy footprints allegedly made by the creature. He concluded that they were ordinary animal tracks, perhaps those of a bear, made larger and more frightening by the melting snow. Hillary also examined a so-called Yeti skullcap preserved in a Tibetan monastery. It turned out to be the skin of a goat-like animal called a sarau. However, the abominable snowman, the Sherpas believed, was also invisible. According to native folklore, he could disappear at will. But the famed beast, Sir Edmund Hillary concluded, was merely a fascinating fairy tale. A startling discovery in a forgotten cave has added a new character to the story, an extinct giant ape that's a dead ringer for Bigfoot. In 1989, anthropologists found the teeth and fossilized bones of a giant ape-like creature hidden in a remote cave in China. The bones were really just fragments, but scientists were able to estimate that the animal stood more than 8 feet tall and weighed as much as 1,200 pounds. They named it Gigantopithecus.
This is a specimen of lower jaw of Gigantopithecus. This is the only adult male specimen. It contains the teeth and the tooth-bearing part of the jaw. When you compare that with the human jaw, broken off at the same parts, you can see it's obviously extraordinarily large.
Some anthropologists believe that we are distantly related to Gigantopithecus, and that roughly 11 million years ago, our lines split and we climbed different branches of our family tree. They also think it's possible that by 2 million years ago, Gigantopithecus roamed the land alongside Homo erectus, the forefather of modern man. The proof lay in the cave in China. Along with the Gigantopithecus bones, scientists found fragments of Homo erectus that dated to the same time. If the two creatures coexisted 2 million years ago, could we still be living with Gigantopithecus's descendants? Grover Krantz thinks so.
The descriptions that people give of the Bigfoot are the same size as what we have reconstructed here on the Gigantopithecus. It comes out to be about 8 feet tall, hairy, wide-shouldered, a very heavy set, and with a nearly ape-like face, but somewhat straighter, more vertical. And that's an exact description of the Bigfoot.
According to this theory, Gigantopithecus originated in East Asia, where its bones were found. It could have crossed into North America over land bridges that formed during the Ice Ages. Scientists believe this was the same route taken by the first Americans, whose descendants still know the creature as Sasquatch. With nothing to go on but questionable sightings and footprints, Bigfoot, by any name, remains the mere shadow of a ghost. Its bones have never been discovered. But Grover Krantz thinks he can explain that as well. He believes animals dying a natural death tend to hide themselves before they die.
I have talked to so many hunters, game guides, officials, and asked them all the same question. How many dead bears have you found that died a natural death? So far, my grand total is 0.
Far from achieving fame and fortune, many who seriously search for Bigfoot pay a heavy price for their beliefs.
If you're in the academic world and you let it be known that you take the Bigfoot story seriously, your reputation suffers rather badly for that. Promotions and pay raises are greatly delayed.
On Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, I absolutely believe in Bigfoot. After I evaluate all the data and read all the information. And on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, I think it's a lot of nonsense. And on Sundays, I rest.
Many sightings of a mythical ape man have been reported, but to this day, no hard evidence exists. And so Bigfoot remains what he has always been, a mythical legend. If the secret of Bigfoot's survival is to remain hidden, it may be very difficult to ever prove its existence. Sightings and stories, legends and half-truths, footprints and fabrications. Somewhere in between lies the truth and the answer to the question, is there a real Bigfoot?